Hello and welcome to Sundry News for Tuesday, July 21st. Here we have this evening's Daily Shapiro. Democrats want to blame Republicans for COVID spread. Here's 5 reasons that doesn't hold up. As coronavirus cases rise across the nation, supposedly, the media and the Democrats, but I repeat myself, have struck upon a narrative. COVID-19 has been mishandled by Republicans. This is, to be sure, a dubious proposition. There are 5 separate pieces of information that should make you skeptical of the Republicans as key bad actors narrative in the media's fantasy. 1. Blue states were harder hit by every metric. After all, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut represent well over 1/3 of COVID-19 deaths, but just 6% of the population of the United States. The worst death per million ratios by state belong to, in order, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, District of Columbia, Louisiana, Michigan, Illinois, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. I guess I'll continue reading that. And it loads, and it loads, and it loads. Here we go, here we go. Hold on. Just, really? Okay, thank you. Delaware. Only Maryland has a Republican governor. Much maligned Florida ranks 25th here, better than Ohio, Colorado, Minnesota, and Virginia. Texas ranks even further down the list at 35th, below Washington and California. Still, the myth persists. Red states blew it. Blue states didn't. 2. New York isn't doing well now because they did it right. They're doing better because they performed horribly. New York isn't doing well now because they did it right. They're doing better because they performed horribly. In order to promulgate this myth, particularly these days, media members put out charts showing the dramatic decrease in deaths in New York. But that decrease is almost assuredly due not to good policy. New York never implemented good policy, from cramming COVID-positive elders back into nursing homes to refusing to cleanse the subways until May, from cheering on mass protests to refusing to lock down until late March. It's due to the fact that Democratic areas were hard hit and the virus burned through the most vulnerable population. It's like arguing that the death rates on Alderaan looked stellar a week after Grand Moff Tarkin's order to destroy the planet. There is no consistent evidence that forced lockdown is the solution. The media have drawn a sharp binary between shutdown states and non-shutdown states. The data don't support it. Sometimes lockdowns are necessary, sometimes they're not. Colorado reopened at the same time as Georgia, but it has seen case declines. California remained largely locked down while Texas and Florida opened, but California is being shellacked. Policy considerations differ from place to place and from climate to climate. Furthermore, Americans became risk-averse before official lockdowns by data. Government compulsion isn't always the rationale for Americans staying at home. Risk-averse. That's a very charitable way to put it. Mask-wearing mandates aren't the big differentiator. The theory seems to be that Americans in red states aren't wearing masks, but that Americans in blue states are. Therefore, red state Americans are idiots spreading disease. That's not true. Here's the latest map from the New York Times on prevalence of mask wearing alongside the latest map from the Times on overall caseload. The maps show clearly that Americans wear masks when the caseload is high. In other words, Americans are self-interested and rational in protecting themselves for the most part. Except that the masks are not about protecting yourself. It's about supposedly trying to look out for everybody. Map of mask wearing in the U.S. versus map of total cases count in U.S. See if you can spot the pattern. Furthermore, there is wide variation in terms of mask adoption abroad. Countries like Norway, Texas, Countries like Norway, 49 deaths per million, Finland, 59 deaths per million, Denmark, 105 deaths per million, and Sweden, 556 deaths per million, have not adopted masking, while countries like Spain, 608 deaths per million, and Hong Kong, 1 death per million, have. Is the most obvious factor in the deaths per million differential mask mandates? And do such variations have anything to do with Republicans? This virus is extraordinarily transmissible. As Jim Garrity wrote today in National Review, a study released last month by the Screwups Research Institute concluded that the strains of the virus spreading so quickly in Europe and the US have a mutated S spike protein that makes them about 10 times as infectious as the strain that was initially identified in Asia. If it seems like the United States is having a tougher time controlling the spread of the coronavirus than Asian countries did in winter and early spring, that's partially because this version of the virus is tougher to stop from spreading. That means it's simply tough to stop the spread. End of story. There is some good news in all of this. Overall, mortality rates have plummeted. We may be seeing a plateau in hospitalizations in Texas, Florida, and Arizona. There is some evidence that T-cell immunity actually makes the herd immunity threshold significantly lower than previously supposed. But no matter what comes next, one thing is clear. This stuff shouldn't be partisan, and there are no obvious answers or sins that allow Democrats to pin the panic on Republicans. Well, the panic is squarely on the shoulders of everybody on social media, everybody in the media, and the Democrats. Moving on, Tucker Carlson. New York Times is planning on revealing where my family lives to injure my wife and kids. Yeah, in a roundabout way, yeah. Missouri AG files to dismiss charges against McCloskey's. I won't stand by while Missouri law is being ignored. Good for him. China forces Christians to renounce faith, destroy Christian symbols, or be cut off from welfare, reports say. My goodness. And all we've been hearing about is the Muslims, but apparently it's not just the Muslims that have it hard. There's some ads. Watch the Ben Shapiro Show. Tune in to the fastest growing, hardest hitting, most insightful, and savagely irreverent conservative podcast on the web. Watch the latest episode. Moving on to the Daily Wire from earlier today, much earlier. Federal judge's son and husband shot at home. Judge was assigned to Epstein Deutsche Bank case last week. And I read this headline yesterday and commented a bit on it. The son is dead. The husband is apparently not dead. Judge is alive. I don't quite understand why they would just go ahead and kill her son. I mean, you'd think they would just threaten or maybe kidnap to get what they want. We warned them. Dallas police chief had nearly 700 protesters taken into custody for blocking highway, and I also read this yesterday. And, good. Let's do more of that. I just hope that they didn't end up releasing those people just a few hours later without bail or charges or, fines or anything like that. Yes, Tucker Carlson, New York Times. Democrat prosecutor charges McCloskey's with felonies after using guns to defend private property. But now, as we just read, the Attorney General of the state is going to make them drop the charges. Good for him. Thousands to walk off jobs and strike for Black Lives. So there's been there's no headlines here that I haven't read yet. Okay, so as I said before when I read this, go ahead, do your thing. Make room for all those unemployed people sitting at home who actually want to work. Let them just step in. Wild Alaskan salmon, $15 off your first box from Wild Alaskan Company. And ads.